The world has just been shaken by a heartbreaking announcement from the royal family, one that no one ever expected to hear. After years of carefully guarded appearances and controlled statements, the palace has confirmed devastating news that has left the public in shock and sorrow. This tragic revelation not only marks a painful chapter in royal history, but also raises serious questions about the future of the monarchy. So, what exactly happened behind the palace walls? The truth is both heartbreaking and deeply unsettling. The day whispers grew louder than tradition. The unexpected announcement sent shockwaves through the palace. What should have been an ordinary morning, marked by polished rituals and rehearsed smiles, instead froze in tense silence. The royal press secretary, pale and composed, delivered a stark statement with no preamble, leaving the world unsettled. Instantly, speculation spread. Was it illness, abdication, or something else entirely? Yet none of the guesses prepared the public for the reality that was beginning to emerge. Cameras captured a tense royal family. Prince William's jaw stiffened, his clenched teeth betraying stress beneath his calm facade. Catherine sat composed, her eyes glinting with a mix of concern and determination. King Charles, frail and withdrawn, seemed overshadowed by his own condition, while Queen Camilla was noticeably absent. That silence, no appearances, no mentions, no reassurances, spoke louder than any statement, raising more questions than answers. Behind palace walls, it became clear the king's health had been far more fragile than publicly acknowledged. Whispers of his declining strength had circulated for months, but the truth could no longer be hidden. As the gravity of the situation sank in, another surprise emerged. A bold initiative unveiled not by Charles, but by William and Catherine. Called the Diana Initiative, the project was presented as a reform program, yet its meaning reached far beyond charity or modernization.
It is, but I've had a small run-up to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles and I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
By invoking the late Princess Diana's name, the couple reawakened a legacy that had never faded. Diana, who died on August 31st, 1997, remained the people's princess, remembered for compassion, courage, and empathy. Linking her memory to a forward-looking initiative was both tribute and declaration, a reminder that her influence could still shape the monarchy decades later. The response was immediate. Social media is flooded with footage of Diana, hospital visits, confrontations with paparazzi, and candid interviews. The public embraced the initiative as a hopeful new chapter, but it cast a shadow over Camila, who had spent years rebuilding her public image and officially became queen beside Charles in May 2023. Her absence from events, speeches, and media mentions spoke volumes. Was it choice, strategy, or simply the reality of shifting royal dynamics? Insiders suggested Camilla had opposed the Diana Initiative, warning it could blur the monarchy's message. With Charles weakened, her objections carried little weight. William and Catherine drove the narrative, shaping speeches and steering the initiative, presenting themselves not as heirs-in-waiting, but as active leaders. Portraits of Diana were quietly restored, charities linked to her legacy revived, and her focus on mental health, empathy, and community echoed in official statements. Meanwhile, Camilla's position grew fragile. After years of public effort, she risked irrelevance as whispers of a post-Camilla era began to circulate. Whether this marks the beginning of a new royal order or simply a momentary adjustment remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: William and Catherine have stepped forward decisively, weaving Diana's memory into the present and reshaping the monarchy's story in real time. And as the world watches, one question lingers: was this carefully planned, or did history simply find its way back through the cracks of tradition? But what secrets are stirring behind the crown, and how will they change everything? Stay connected to your screen. Whispers of a shifting crown. Behind the grand walls of Buckingham Palace, silence often says more than speeches. The latest royal announcement may have sounded polished, but beneath its careful words, there was a storm no crown could hide. It was not only about King Charles's health, Though that shadow loomed heavily, it was about the subtle shift of power within the family itself. Courtiers spoke of sleepless nights, tense counsel, and a monarch who looked steady in public, yet carried the weight of regret in private. The so-called Diana Initiative, unveiled under Charles's name, was far more than a charitable plan. For the public, it revived the spirit of the woman they never forgot, the princess who defined compassion and connection. But for Charles, it reopened wounds he had tried for decades to heal. Every cheer for the initiative sounded like a quiet reminder of past mistakes. Diana's memory was no longer distant. It lived on in her son and daughter-in-law. William's determination and Catherine's calm strength echoed her values with striking clarity, and in doing so, they reminded the world of what once was lost. For Camilla, the announcement felt like a silent erasure. After years of rebuilding her image and carefully gaining acceptance, she found herself again overshadowed. Some wondered aloud if her absence from certain public moments was a chance or choice. Others whispered that her influence was waning, her place within the narrative shrinking as Diana's legacy once again took center stage. William, meanwhile, did not appear to push for the throne, yet his presence seemed to fill every space. Without demanding, he was redefining what the monarchy could be: modern, empathetic, closer to the people. Insiders hinted that much of the speech around the initiative was crafted not by Charles's advisors, but by William and Catherine themselves. If true, it marked a turning point, the heirs no longer waiting quietly, but guiding the story in real time. For Charles, the realization was painful. His reign, only recently cemented in May 2023 at Westminster Abbey, was already being reshaped by forces he could not fully control. His legacy, once guarded, was now entwined with the legacy of the woman he had once tried to erase from memory. And as for the monarchy's future, perhaps the real question is no longer if William will lead, but what secrets are being hidden in the rewriting of the British monarchy. Stay glued to your screen as the story unfolds. The secret rewriting of the British monarchy. The palace expected continuity, a steady rhythm of rituals and schedules, yet beneath the polished surface, power was already moving in silence. The meetings once guided by King Charles began to drift toward his son. Before long, Kensington Palace, not Clarence House, became the place journalists sought answers. There was no decree, no official handover. Still, the message was clear enough. The weight of the monarchy had begun to tilt.
Guard of honor!
Prince William, long regarded as careful and restrained, now moves with an energy that feels both deliberate and determined. His words carry fewer jokes, his manner more measured. Behind closed doors, insiders describe him mapping out strategies not with haste, but with precision, almost like a general planning for a campaign, not of armies, but of legacy. This is not rebellion. It is not even loud. It is, instead, a takeover so quiet that it almost feels accidental. Yet those watching closely know better. And he is not alone. By his side, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has emerged with an authority that requires no crown to be recognized. Her presence at hospitals, schools, and community centers is less about duty on paper and more about genuine connection. Where Queen Camilla once built influence through careful appearances and relationships, Kate has cultivated something harder to replace: public trust. Each appearance, each calm smile, each gesture of compassion reinforces her role as the stabilizer of a monarchy in transition. The contrast is unavoidable. Camilla, who once fought hard to shape her image and even earned reluctant acceptance at Charles's coronation in 2023, now finds herself increasingly absent. Her name fades from headlines, her portraits quietly removed from certain offices, her charities attracting less coverage. Some of her closest allies have stepped away, reassigned, or retired. To many observers, her silence feels less like a choice and more like exclusion.
I've been actually trying to keep quiet about reaching 3/4 of a century.
For a queen, irrelevance may be more brutal than criticism. Even Ray Mill, her long-guarded sanctuary in Wiltshire, no longer shields her from speculation. Once a refuge from ceremony and glare, it has become a subject of intrigue, whispers swirling about uninvited attention and documents said to have surfaced there. Whether those rumors hold weight or not, they add to a picture of isolation of a woman who once climbed to the center of the stage, now finding herself edged into the wings. Meanwhile, William and Kate are reshaping the royal narrative in real time. Their influence is not proclaimed, but demonstrated through subtle choices, through public warmth, through their very ability to embody the ideals once tied so strongly to Princess Diana. The so-called Diana Initiative, echoing the late princess's compassion and commitment, is not just remembered but reactivated, becoming the symbolic heartbeat of this new chapter. King Charles remains on the throne, but to many, he resembles a portrait more than an active sovereign, allowing change to unfold rather than resisting it. For Camila, that distance feels like abandonment. For William and Kate Itanapu, Putiswate and Hudur, it is an opportunity. Putiswate and Hudur, it is an opportunity. And so whispers grow louder. Perhaps the monarchy is not in decline at all, but in the middle of a quiet rebirth, its pulse now set not by titles, but by the steady presence of William and Kate. In this reshaping of royal power, the crown is not slipping, it is slowly being refitted. And the world, ever watchful, wonders if the real queen-in-waiting has already begun her reign in everything but name. But what happens when silence outweighs crowns? Could secrets be shaking the royal family? Stay with us to find out. When silence spoke louder than crowns. The announcement was never spoken aloud in the grand halls, yet everyone inside Buckingham Palace seemed to hear it. A ripple moved through the corridors, carried not by trumpets or official proclamations, but by the absence of them. For King Charles, who had waited more than 70 years to finally wear the crown, this silence was louder than words. It wasn't simply oversight, it felt like something far more deliberate. Behind closed doors, meetings multiplied, calls were made, calendars reshuffled, and yet the king remained on the margins of a decision that had already taken root. The so-called Diana Initiative, whispered into headlines and splashed across front pages, wasn't introduced as rebellion, but the effect was the same. It placed William and Catherine at the center of public admiration, and Charles on the sidelines of his own reign. The monarch's first instinct was not anger, but disbelief. Has compassion really been turned into a strategy? When father and son finally sat down, the air at Clarence House was heavy enough to bend silver. Charles, weary but unbending, asked why he had been bypassed, why the crown had been exposed without his hand guiding it. William, steady and unflinching, gave no apology. His reply was brief, the kind of sentence that rewrites a relationship. This isn't a discussion, it's a strategy. That moment marked a quiet fracture. Charles, shaped by decades of ritual and caution, still trusted in continuity. William, raised under the flashbulbs of scandal and tragedy, knew survival demanded speed, change, and a language that resonated with the public now, not tomorrow. What his father read as impatience, William saw as preservation. There was no compromise, no handshake, only a silence as sharp as glass when Charles left the room. For the first time, staffers whispered of a balance that had tipped. Courtiers adjusted their tone. Advisors drafted new talking points. And aides began treating William less like a prince waiting his turn, and more like a leader already running the next lap. The date may not mark a coronation, but in its own way, it signaled a shift no ceremony could match. Influence had begun to drift. Power, once fixed firmly in the throne, was moving, quietly, steadily, toward the next generation. But what secrets lie behind this silent rivalry, and how will it shake the royal family? Stay connected. Whispers of a silent rivalry. The first ripple didn't come from a grand speech or a royal decree, but from a single, carefully chosen sentence. What began as a polite comment at a charity luncheon turned into a spark that lit the palace walls ablaze with speculation. Queen Camilla, smiling lightly when asked about the Diana initiative, replied, "The monarchy has always served with dedication. We don't need to invoke the past to prove it." To some, it was nothing more than formality, but to the press and the public, it was unmistakably a veiled jab, directed not just at Diana's memory, but at the woman now carrying her torch. Catherine, Princess of Wales. Within hours, headlines dissected every syllable. Social media framed the remark as proof of an unspoken rivalry, the kind the palace dreads but cannot silence. Commentators asked the obvious question: was Camilla defending tradition or defending herself? By the time opinion polls surfaced, a pattern was clear. The public wasn't neutral. Admiration for Kate, already high since the Diana initiative was introduced in early 2024, surged to new heights. Kate, however, did not strike back with equal force. She waited. Days later, at a modest event tied to the initiative, she stepped to the microphone. No lengthy rebuttal, no sharp edges, just one line. "This work isn't about the past, it's about the future we build together." Calm, composed, devastating. It was more than a response. It was a reframe, a subtle reminder that while Camilla clung to stability,
having been lucky enough to meet some of our country's amazing charities and organizations,
Kate stood for transformation. The contrast could not have been clearer. One queen rooted in the machinery of monarchy, steady but rigid. Another woman, not yet crowned, speaking with empathy, modernity, and purpose. And the public noticed. Commentators began openly speculating. Was this merely a clash of styles, or the early outlines of a power struggle? Behind palace gates, aides scrambled to contain the whispers, insisting unity remained unbroken. Yet insiders hinted at something different, that Kate's influence was no longer confined to ceremonial duties. She was shaping conversations, guiding strategy, and, in some subtle way, shifting the narrative of what leadership within the crown could look like. Two women, two futures. And while the palace project's calm, the people outside its gates have already begun choosing sides. But what is really fueling these whispers of a royal rift? And how deep does it go? Keep watching. Whispers of a royal rift. Whispers began to ripple through the palace long before the world caught wind of them. They weren't the usual rumors of fashion choices or ceremonial blunders, but murmurs of something deeper, something unsettling. A quiet conflict unfolding in plain sight. Moments when Princess Anne, usually the model of control, let her restraint slip, revealed frustration sharp enough to cut through centuries of etiquette. Was this just a family disagreement, or the first cracks in the crown's foundation? The question lingers, even as answers remain clouded in secrecy. To many who know Anne, her behavior is not surprising. She is not one to pick fights for the sake of spectacle.
And I need to say that, because...
When she challenges someone, it is deliberate, a matter of principle rather than vanity. And this time, her target is no minor courtier or protocol officer. It is Queen Camilla herself. Anne has always believed the monarchy is not just ceremony, not just gilded titles or balcony waves. To her, it must remain a living service to the people. Anyone, even a queen, who threatens to dilute that mission will face her unflinching defiance. Camilla, however, is no stranger to conflict. Her life has been forged in the furnace of public criticism, scandal, and relentless scrutiny. From the days when she was vilified in headlines to the moment she walked into Westminster Abbey on May 6, 2023. As Queen Consort, she has proven herself resilient, strategic, and skilled at survival. To imagine she would simply bow to Anne's sharp words or silent resistance is to underestimate her entirely. If Anne embodies blunt honesty and duty, Camilla embodies quiet endurance and political calculation. Together, they represent two forces colliding in one of the most delicate moments in modern royal history. The tension between them is not new. Those close to the family say it has simmered for decades, long before Camila officially joined the firm. Their history is tangled with old wounds, romantic entanglements, and decisions that altered lives in ways neither could have predicted. To understand the current frostiness, one must glance back to the 1970s, when Anne's heart belonged to Andrew Parker Bowles, a dashing army officer admired for his charisma. Their romance was passionate, and whispers of marriage filled the air. But under the Act of Settlement of 1701, Anne's path was blocked. Andrew was Catholic, and marriage to him would have cost her royal position. Their love, no matter how deep, could not withstand the law. Camilla's connection to Andrew, and later to Charles, complicated matters further. What began as overlapping affections eventually grew into lifelong bonds that shaped the monarchy in irreversible ways. The tangled web of past love stories and royal duty laid the groundwork for the strained glances and clipped exchanges that now spill into the public eye. So when Anne's disapproval shows, it is not mere stubbornness. It is rooted in decades of personal history, of betrayals and compromises. And when Camila holds her ground, it is not simply pride. It is the survival instinct of a woman who has fought too hard to be erased.
Welsh mounted pony, and I remember there was a very large horse show next door to us called Ditchling Horse Show.
This is not a tabloid squabble. It is a silent war fought with influence, loyalty, and legacy. The world watches closely, reading into every absence, every icy exchange, wondering, is this simply an old wound resurfacing, or the sign of a monarchy shifting beneath its own weight? One thing is clear. The battle between Anne and Camila is not about crowns or titles alone. It is about who defines the monarchy's future, and who, when history is written, will be remembered as its true guardian. But what secrets are hiding behind the crown, and how will they shake the royal family? Stay glued to your screen. Shadows behind the crown. What is certain is that from this moment, nothing about the British monarchy felt simple again. The royal family, bound by centuries of tradition, now finds itself caught between memory, loyalty, and power. And at the center of this quiet storm stand two women, Princess Anne and Queen Camilla, whose history stretches far beyond polished smiles at public events. Their story winds back to 1973, a year that altered the family's course. Princess Anne married Captain Mark Phillips, while Camilla wed Andrew Parker Bowles. Yet even then, Camilla's heart remained tied to Charles, and Charles to her. By 1981, when he married Diana, that secret bond had already taken root, leaving behind a trail of sorrow and one of the most famous love triangles in modern history. For years, Camilla carried the weight of being branded the villain, the woman blamed for Diana's unhappiness. Hated by many, ignored by some, she rebuilt herself quietly, outlasting ridicule with patience and strategy. Anne, meanwhile, never lost sight of her duty. Loyal, disciplined, and protective of her brother, she watched the damage unfold with clear eyes. She remembered Diana's suffering, and perhaps she never forgave Camilla for her part in it. Even after Charles and Camilla's marriage in 2005, with the late Queen's blessing, Anne kept her distance. She was polite, but never warm. Once she bluntly remarked that Camilla could never be a true queen in her heart. Time, however, has a way of softening hard edges. Camilla's persistence, her devotion to charity, her calm presence beside Charles, gradually earned her cautious respect.
And like each one of you here, she loved to write. For a decade, she wrote poems.
At public events, the frost began to melt. Small gestures, fleeting glances, even shared smiles when cameras were turned away. Still, the divide remained, quiet but visible, a reminder that history is not easily forgotten. Recently, tension flared again, not in whispers, but in plain sight, at the University of London's Great Hall, where Camilla was honored for her contributions to literacy. The atmosphere shimmered with grandeur and strain. Camilla entered with regal poise, Anne with dignified composure, and yet even their movements were interpreted as messages. When Camilla gestured for Anne to lead the way, Anne declined, allowing Camilla to go first. A small gesture, perhaps, but one laden with symbolism. Days later, Buckingham Palace announced Camilla would miss a key royal performance, citing treatment for a chest infection. Routine maybe, but the timing raised questions. Why retreat so soon after such a formal ceremony? Was it truly illness or something more layered, more political? Meanwhile, Anne pressed on with her duties in New Brunswick, her silence only fueling speculation. The public wonders, is this a clash of personalities or of principles? Anne, the embodiment of duty and order, versus Camilla, who built her place from scorn to acceptance. Rumors swirl of legal disputes, of subtle power struggles. Perhaps nothing dramatic will surface, or perhaps this is the monarchy's next storm. One truth endures. Behind the carriages and ceremonies lies a web of rivalries and shifting loyalties. Each glance, each absence, each carefully chosen word matters. And as the world watches, every detail is dissected, leaving us to wonder, is the monarchy facing its quietest, yet most dangerous test from within? So what do you think this tragic announcement truly means for the royal family's future? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to share, comment, and stay tuned for more.